retirement funds are not like normal investments that you can move and withdraw. There's rules and restrictions and penalties. It is incredibly hard to justify that where someone has, let's say, earning 2 million a year in terms of pension income, paying no tax, all of a sudden to be on a scale of 45% in terms of income tax on that pension, for example, is a drastic move.
A very good morning to all of our viewers today, and I'm very fortunate to be sitting with my colleague John-Paul Fraser from Tax Consulting South Africa. We've seen some incredible developments around the foreign pension exemption, and today is an opportunity to have two guys talking tax and simply picking up where we last left off. John-Paul, good morning to you and welcome.
Very good morning, Delano. Always a pleasure, as you know. And very excited to be on Two Guys Talking Tax. Hopefully again, we just provide what our viewers are looking for, which I think we did well last time.
Perfect. I think, John-Paul, not too long ago, you and I did a podcast on this topic, and there's been an incredible amount of public commentary, not only on the podcast itself, but just in general in the space of media. And you've been very instrumental in voicing the firm's views on this proposed law change. Do you maybe want to just give us a snapshot view of what your experience has been as a tax attorney in this space and the law changing, or at least the development of it changing?
Yeah, I think a good starting point is to mention that we are a firm that focuses on expats and cross-border international tax. So wherever we can, we try and get involved. Previously it was the Section 10102 foreign employment income exemption. And so when we've seen that an exemption for other expats who have left South Africa and returned, accumulating wealth, having offshore pensions, and plan to do so under the premise that there is an exemption in place, as well as foreign individuals coming into South Africa who have made their retirement plans and destination for retirement in South Africa based on this exemption, I don't think we had much choice but to intervene in the sense of provide constructive and on-the-ground insight, which I think, if I may say, is what separated the feedback we gave, is we've got practical experience and what is actually happening with expatriates returning and foreign individuals retiring in South Africa.
Now, on this topic, I think just for the benefit of our viewers, there are so many talking points. And I think one talking point I'd like us to just delve into a bit more is that in South Africa, when there are proposals around changing laws, it is a process that heavily involves a consultative approach with stakeholders. And with this proposed law, we could see that from August to date, there's been a very consultative approach. And I often like to use the phrasing, a participatory democracy, because laws affect us. And when it comes to the space of tax, we know that SARS's legislative purpose is to collect as much tax as possible. But the tax that they collect needs to be legally due to them based on laws. And this proposed change of deleting Section 10(1) GC2, which in very simple terms and for the benefit of our viewers, it's an exemption which lies in the Income Tax Act. It applies to individual taxpayers who are still on SARS's records as tax residents. So it does not apply to non-resident taxpayers in South Africa, but resident taxpayers. But they find themselves being outside of South Africa, usually earning foreign employment income, and whilst earning foreign employment income, contributing to foreign pensions. Now, the proposal as it was to delete this exemption in its entirety. And it's not the first time as a firm we've seen this come up as a proposal on how SARS, as a revenue authority, can collect as much tax as possible. But I think what we've seen as well is deleting exemptions does also have a detrimental impact on taxpayers. And it might not be a suitable approach in order for the Revenue Authority to increase its revenue collection. Do you maybe have any comments around that?
Definitely. I mean, plenty, but to be specific, an exemption is incredibly important for taxpayers. And when we are looking around the world, a lot of countries don't have the natural beauty and drive and, how do I say it, incentive for individuals to be here. That's why South Africans, even when they do leave as expatriates, still will call South Africa, a lot of them, South Africa's home, you know. So they incentivize individuals investing in their countries by tax incentives. You can get residence by investment. You can get 3 years a reduced tax rate. You get all these types of mechanisms. And South Africa, we are not as incentivized in terms of tax incentives to bring in investment. So where we do have an exemption that specifically relates to, firstly, individuals who have foreign pensions. I mean, people who have pensions in South Africa is a minority. Secondly, they are looking to retire in South Africa. And generally, they are, well, the consultations that we deal with are incredibly high net worth individuals most of the time. And they are looking to bring that money into South Africa to spend to live a good life. So in terms of removing an exemption in its entirety, firstly, problematic in the sense that and we'll touch on some practical comments that were shared in the consultative or participatory democracy process, as you call it. But it leaves them stranded, in other words. And on such short notice, where retirement funds are not like normal investments that you can move and withdraw, there's rules and restrictions and penalties. It is incredibly hard to justify that where someone has, let's say, earning 2 million a year in terms of pension income, paying no tax, all of a sudden to be on a scale of 45% in terms of income tax on that pension, for example, is a drastic move. And the repercussions of it, not to delve too much into it, were some stakeholders were foreign individuals who share the sentiment that this will make them leave South Africa. Secondly, financial planners share the sentiment that in terms of their portfolio of clients, 60% of them would leave South Africa. And in terms of the consultations that I have, it is a massive deterrent for people who are looking to come to South Africa and bring what they've accumulated, bearing in mind, over their entire life with them. And we also need to understand, and I shared this with Treasury in our oral presentation, to say, guys, we are also dealing with individuals who have set up 2 or 3 contingency plans to retire in. So in a change like this, and I'm paraphrasing one of the consultation, the feedback I had was, I'll just go to Mauritius, you know. So these are the kind of consequences we're facing. And long story short, by trying to remove this exemption to collect on pension income, we are actually deriving ourselves from massive capital investment in terms of coming into South Africa.
Those are very interesting comments. And I think what's standing out for me is we're already dealing with a minority group who are registered for tax in South Africa. A smaller group of registered taxpayers who actually have these retirement funds, let alone foreign pension funds. And we are looking at, the explanatory memorandum when the draft bill was published rationalized 2 reasons for the change. So the change was, let's delete the exemption out of the law book in its entirety. Not amend words, let's delete it. And making that proposal, one must give reasons for a change. And when you look at the 2 reasons that were given, the golden thread there was really for South Africa to protect the fiscus and not to undermine our residence-based tax system. So not to have taxes foregone for the benefit of the fiscus, which we hope is for the betterment of society, why SARS collects a lot of tax. But with that, I seem to pick up the dynamic that some individuals, whether they are taxed residents abroad or foreign nationals potentially coming in, they also have the financial ability to choose different destinations. And it then leans towards, well, what makes South Africa attractive? And would deleting this exemption hold us in high regard as an attractive destination, especially for foreign nationals? Or would this be to the detriment? And are we perhaps considering something that will have more negatives than positives? Don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, I think I'll keep my comments as such, comments, because a very important submission I made was when tax policy is created, we do have the Davis Committee. So complex tax policy, and I appreciate this, is we have a committee that deals with this type of stuff. So that when we are proposing changes, that it is justified and also based on information and something that you can rely on to say, this is a good decision we're making. Because bearing in mind, we're dealing with people's lives.
Like data-driven decisions.
Correct.
Okay.
In the 2018 Davis report, it specifically deals with the wealth tax. And in that report, it actually explicitly states, and bearing in mind, this is a committee that deals with the complexities of tax policy. They said that is still a challenge to deal with. At that stage, we didn't know how necessarily to really address that, and that more investigation and information would be required before a conclusive decision is made on how we deal with retirement funds. And my submission simply being that until then, we shouldn't be making those amendments. And from that report to date, there has not been a submission from Parliament, Treasury, nor SARS to say, look, guys, we've gone back to the drawing board and we have looked into it. Here's information. Had that been the case, maybe, this would have been a very different outcome. But until that report has been adhered to, the prudent thing to do is to not make any amendments. And as such is one of the submissions that we as a firm made, not to jump the gun, which was really appreciated and taken quite seriously. And must give credit to Treasury for that. Actually quoting that they will go back to the drawing board and they look into and investigate this further,
Okay, so maybe just the elephant in the room. What was the outcome of the Parliament sessions?
Well, I think very positive. Firstly, the proposed deletion of Section 10(1) GC2 has been withdrawn by Treasury and Parliament. So bearing in mind that the implementation date of this was 1 March next year, incredibly short notice. So them withdrawing that proposed amendment is a massive win, if I may say, just on behalf of us as a firm, just indicating and showing that we do fight for, not against anyone, but for what's fair and right for our expats and foreign individuals who are looking to come into South Africa. But secondly, it's a massive win in terms of that from 1 March 2026, foreign individuals and expats returning who have these and are affected by these foreign pensions don't need to worry over the festive season at least, So if I can be a bit lighthearted in that sense, but a massive win, yeah.
I think going off of a massive win, I think when you're at the top, know when to be humble and to know that, look, it's a great win, but we certainly look forward to the topic resurfacing, whether it be in a year or two. And as a firm, let's continue to hear what our clients have to say about how tax impacts them as expatriates. So for this session, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you very much for your contributions to the firm in this development of the law. And thank you for our viewers, and hope you've taken something out of this. Have a great festive season. Goodbye.